Conscientious individuals tend to be task-focused and orderly rather than distractible and disorganized. Neurotic individuals are prone to experiencing negative emotions like anxiety, depression, irritation, whereas at the other side of the personality trait, they tend to be more emotionally resilient. Finally, people who are high in openness tend to have a broad rather than narrow range of interests, are sensitive rather than indifferent to things like art and beauty, and prefer novelty to routine, essentially. So the Big Five was developed to represent as much of the variability in individuals' personalities as possible. So it's not a type. It's not like we either have conscientiousness or we don't. We all have it. It's just on a scale. So some of us have a lot of it, and some people naturally don't have too much of it. So we've gotten to a point in the literature with our studies and our understanding of personality that we've kind of gotten to the point where these 5 broad traits. I think there were 2 guys in like the early 80s that come up with this Big Five, and it's been like that ever since. So it's pretty robust. It's stood the test of time. It's the most accurate understanding that we have about personality at this particular time. So when I was talking about the continuum nature, that's what I mean. So if you can see the 5 traits there that we looked at in the other illustration, and you can see that on one end of the continuum you've got a different set of subtraits compared to the other side of the continuum. So every single human being can be plotted along each of those 5 continuums with regards to their 5 personality dimensions, essentially. So at the end of this seminar, I'll be supplying you with some links so that you can find out more about your personality. I've been able to find some really scientifically sound personality tests because there's a lot of really dodgy ones out there, and we can talk about those later if you like, the good ones versus the bad ones. But we'll get to that at the end. So, because we don't have time to touch on all 5, I'm just going to focus on the one that I think is most important for trading this week, which is conscientiousness. And then I'll cover the other 4 in our next seminar, which do have their place with regards to being better traders. But conscientiousness kind of stands out above the crowd in that sense as being the main one. So let's now spend a few minutes breaking down conscientiousness. So what it is the propensity for someone to follow socially prescribed norms for impulse control, to be goal-directed, to be planful, to be able to delay gratification, to follow norms and rules. It also looks at the tendency to be organized and dependable, to show self-discipline, to aim for achievement, and to prefer to be planned rather than spontaneous. So all of these traits have proven to be beneficial for trading. So for example, self-discipline helps traders to remain on track and aligned with their current goals. So for example, their buy zones and their sell zones. We found in studies that people with low scores in self-discipline will likely find it difficult to remain on those paths. Another example is impulse control. So a person with strong impulse control is not likely to give in to things like FOMO and hype. They're able to kind of withstand that. They have that level of resilience. And instead, in those situations where, half the bloody crypto community might be just going, absolutely apeshit over something, they tend to remain calm in those situations and level-headed. So they tend to analyze the trends properly, and they analyze the data accordingly with a clear mind. And then from there, they make the necessary decisions based on that analysis. They don't get caught up in the hype and everything like that. So one more example. So showing planful behavior is important for trading. So we have studies to show us that ability to plan for, articulate, and have a solid system for trading, so a set of rules to follow, has been shown to enhance the trading experience and also improve performance. So as you can see, we could literally sit here all day providing example after example, um, touching all those lower order traits of conscientiousness and how they can assist in improving your overall trading experience. So it seems to be the case that if you want to have a successful, happy, and rewarding trading experience, then trait conscientiousness is at the very heart and the very crux of this. So you might have a few questions at this point. So one might be, well, can we change aspects of our personality, or is it hardwired? So genetics do play a part in personality. So roughly 50% of our personality has been shown to be rooted in our biology and deterministic, meaning we get given roughly half of it from our parents, essentially. And the more exciting part of that is the other 50%. That 50% is flexible, it's adaptable, and it's training, and that's where we start to talk about neuroplasticity. So that's good news for those that may actually have low or moderate conscientiousness and might want to show a willingness to increase their conscientiousness. So that basically means that yes, we have now studies that prove that, and then we have systems and activities that we can give you, drawing on the personality psychology literature, where I'll talk about one study in particular. It was released in 2018 by two guys from Chicago, and they found that they gave participants these daily activities, and they're relatively simple daily activities. They take about 5 or 10 minutes out of your day. And what they found, that if these people stay consistent and keep doing these activities every day for about 16 weeks, they found that these participants had mean level changes in their state level conscientiousness. And then sometimes they jumped up a whole standard deviation, which is a lot. So for example, for those that scored maybe a 40 out of 100 for conscientiousness, they went through this 16-week training period. They came out with a 50 or 55 point conscientiousness level instead, which is massive. That's a big difference. That's significant. The other thing that was cool from that study is that it showed that after the 16-week period, for example, if you were to stop doing those daily activities, that new homeostasis level would actually remain the same. And that was interesting because what we have there in evolutionary biology is called an epigenetic effect. So epi in Latin means on top of. So it's a mutation that's occurring on top of the DNA that changes the mean level of that particular personality trait that was targeted, whether it be conscientiousness or openness or extroversion and things like that. So it's pretty serious stuff that's occurring. You know, there's a lot of work happening at the protein level and the DNA level to make those changes and enact on them. So another question you might have is something along the lines of, well, what are some of those simple steps and activities that I can do in order to increase my conscientiousness? So here's a couple. So firstly, you need to assess your level of conscientiousness. You need a baseline. And I can help you with that at the end of this seminar today. I've got some questionnaires that you can that we can roll through. Once we find your baseline, then we can start to provide more of a customized, tailored approach to your daily activities, because some of the activities will be more beneficial for some than others, and it all depends on where you start with your conscientiousness. But for those people that are really low in conscientiousness, yeah, I'll get to that question in a second. But if you have quite a low level of conscientiousness, doing simple things like making your bed in the morning, I know it sounds kind of weird, but I'll explain the reasoning behind it, is actually uh, have been proven to change state conscientiousness. The reason why is because when you get up and start doing some simple tasks, they may seem simple to you, but to your central nervous system, it's a little bit more nuanced than that. So by getting up first thing and making your bed in the morning, essentially you're tricking your brain into thinking that you've already been productive for the day. You've already ticked something off. And then what happens when you do that is it sends a short dopamine spike through your central nervous system, that feel good neurotransmitter. And that's what normally is enough to get people started for the day. So then after that, you then clean up the rest of your room. Then you go make, a nutritious breakfast. Then you go maybe do some vacuuming. Then you might go walk the dog. And each of those little activities is sending a dopamine hit through your central nervous system. And it's essentially tricking your brain into thinking that you've already been super productive for the day, when in reality, you've just, done a few household chores. So it's a really good life hack in order to get things started down this road of increasing your conscientiousness. Another way to boost it is to get organized. So orderliness is central to conscientiousness. So I've got an illustration here that shows you, I hope you can see that shows you, if not, I'll just actually, I'll upload it. So I'm just uploading that illustration now into the chat if you can't see it. So you'll see that with our personality, it's hierarchical. So you've got your 5 broad dimensions at the top, and then underneath it, you can see all what we refer to as the lower order facets or the subtraits that essentially make up the trait dimension conscientiousness. So industrious and orderliness are the 2 main ones that make up conscientiousness. And then they start to branch out. So I've only provided 2 layers. There's actually about 6 layers. So for example, if you look at achievement striving and self-discipline in that illustration, there's more that come underneath those. So they keep spreading out. So getting organized is another good one to boost your conscientiousness. So particularly when there's a lot of demands and things to do in the day. So without order, we may fall prey to the distraction and procrastination monsters, right? So start managing your time with daily, weekly schedules, to-do lists, set reminders for yourself. Have a diary or a schedule of some description. So the research has found that setting up all these schedules and to-do lists is a really good way of increasing your orderliness, which in turn increases your conscientiousness at the same time. And remember that by increasing conscientiousness, you're essentially increasing those aspects that make you a better trader at the same time. Don't forget that. That's why we're going through this stuff. Another thing, be consistent, reliable, and responsible for yourself and those around you if possible. Make concerted efforts to turn up to work, school, meetings on time. Adopt responsibility for the challenging things that life throws at you. Don't run away from them, because as you start to move through these lower order traits and conscientiousness, responsibility is another big one that comes up. So teach yourself also the practice and the skill of delay of gratification, which is essentially giving up short-term rewards for bigger rewards in the future. And there was a really cool study that looked at delay of gratification. I think it was in the early 50s. And a social psychologist by the name of Walter Mischel, his name was, and he did it with lollies and marshmallows with kids. So he basically said, you can have 1 marshmallow now, or you can have 10 in half an hour's time, and they had to sit there and essentially wait for it. A lot of them gave in because those critical aspects of their cognition weren't quite developed at that point. But it works similar with adults as well. So you might have seen those videos in getting around YouTube where people walk up to researchers walk up to people in the street and ask them, "What do you want, $10 now, or do you want $100 in a month?" and stuff like that. So they're all really kind of cool ways of measuring things like delay of gratification. And of course, if you can build your delay of gratification, that's going to really help with managing FOMO and also hype. That's at the crux of those two things. So let's get to measurement. So I'm going to throw a link up. So can you guys see that website that I've got up?
No, I can just still see the Big Five presentation, mate.
Why is it doing that? I'll figure it out later. I'll just copy and paste the link in now. So jump into the PG chat there, open up the chat window. It's the personal.psu.edu. So when you click that link, it'll give you essentially two options. It's the same test, one just is a long version and the other's a short version. So I recommend to do the short version. It should only take about 10 or so minutes. And it is designed to test where you sit on the big five. So not just conscientiousness, but the other four personality traits as well. So this will be handy because I want to come back to this in our next seminar when we do the rest of the big five, the other four traits. So what I'll do is I'll hang around now and I'll start answering some questions. And hopefully, while we go through that, that'll give you some time to maybe jump into the IPIP Neo, run through the test, and grab your results. And then we can start looking at some people's results, particularly their conscientiousness. And then we can generate some discussion around that and find some ways in which we can get you guys to improve your conscientiousness if you're interested. So let me just take a second to scroll up to see if I missed any questions. No. They do get recorded. They should get posted. There should be an AMA archive somewhere. I'll find it in a minute for you.
It's all right to ask a question now, Josh.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so when you're like sort of saying about improving your state of conscientiousness, it's like looking at these big five. Like I personally feel like the emotional stability here is what takes over when I'm making whatever decision it may be, whether it comes to trading or in life. It's just for me being able to differentiate the two and don't let the emotional stability take over when it comes to making a conscientious decision, if that makes sense. It's knowing when to split and how to split myself off from that emotional decision which I'm going to make, whether it's going to be to ape in or whatever it may be. So it's just like I struggle with being persistent in creating new habits. As obviously, if you do want to change any of these states, you've then got to change certain habits to help you or to enhance your ability to be able to change. But it's just staying persistent with it and staying on track, I guess, which always is my downfall, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so that was another one of the reasons why I spoke about that study before, because it seems to be the case that for most of us, if we want to make meaningful change to some element of who we are, a certain personality trait, the sweet spot is about 16 weeks. So if you can remain consistent on the activities for 16 weeks, then after that point, generally what happens is it becomes automatic. And it just solidifies an aspect of who you are then, essentially. So if you can muster up the consistency to go 14 to 16 weeks, you should find that at that point that it starts to get a lot easier, because it becomes automatic, because it's ingrained and become as a part of who you are, essentially. So for your particular challenge, yeah, self-discipline is one, self-control is one, impulse control is one. Those three traits all come under conscientiousness. So if you're doing stuff to increase your conscientiousness, that's a good thing. Neuroticism might be one for you to look at as well, which I will tackle in the next seminar. And that is a lot of that is on it's about emotional stability in some respects. So that might help you as well the next seminar when we start to tackle that. Then also emotional intelligence, which I'm going to do, I think, in seminar 3 or 4 maybe, where we start to look at that. And then also stoicism, because the Stoics are really good at separating emotion from the decision-making process. They're really logical individuals, and it's a philosophy that helps a lot of people in trading, because after a while they learn that very uncanny ability, and they essentially learn to compartmentalize emotion from the situation that they have at hand. And obviously, if you can develop that skill, that's not just good for trading, but it's good for, all the other challenging aspects of life as well, when you have to make important decisions where emotions tend to run high. So there's quite a few things that we'll be covering in this seminar that you will probably find quite useful for improving that aspect, which is becoming a less emotional trader, essentially.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, man. Look forward to it. I'm just an emotional mess.
Yeah, man. It's one of those things, right? Like when I was talking about what is personality and defining it, it's all about feelings, emotions, and behaviors. It's all wrapped in there. So it's an important one for sure. Okay, so 16PF, there was a guy called Carl Jung. So he developed his theory of personality. It would have been over 100 years ago now. And a lot of the 16PF stuff is based on his thinking. And his thinking is more based on personality being a type. So you either have it or you don't. And that theory was debunked about 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. So I try to steer clear of 16PF. Anything like Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, Disc Model, they're all predicated on Carl Jung's theories as well. So I try to steer clear of them. The Myers-Briggs is an interesting one because it's a lot of the corporates use it. Even the Fortune 100, Fortune 100 and 500 companies use it as like a development tool and a training tool for their staff. So while it's good to be talking about personality and its interactions and how it plays out in the workplace, I would much prefer to use a theory of personality that's actually been proven to be accurate. Whereas Myers-Briggs is not. It's psychometrically flawed. If you want to start talking about statistics and stuff like that, with regards to the validity of the test, it lacks things like criterion validity, face validity. So anything to do with validity basically means that what it says it's measuring, it's actually not. And it's not terribly reliable as well. meaning with reliability, if you were to do the same test kind of over and over again, you should be getting similar results. And if you do, then that essentially suggests that the reliability is good. So everything that the scientific method preaches about, consistency, reliability, validity, sensitivity, things like the 16PF and the Myers-Briggs and the DIS model all lack. So yeah, personally, I wouldn't. I would try steer clear. And it is sad that like these corporations in Web 2 are paying these Myers-Briggs counselors like 10 grand a session to come in and run these seminars when, you know, it's just way off. One of the counter arguments that the Myers-Briggs people use is that it acts as a practical tool for getting people together in a group and talking about personality and how we're different and how we can leverage strengths and weaknesses to, you know, work together and things like that. And that's fine. But then my argument to that is, well, we can do that with the IPIP as well. So why don't we just do that instead? Alrighty, so we've got some personality tests coming through here. Your score is average. That's not bad, man. Like, average is better than low. Your dutifulness is through the roof. Almost 90th percentile. So what that with dutifulness essentially is what that's telling me is when, for example, you are given something to do, there's a strong sense of duty to do it and do it to the best of your ability, essentially. Conscientiousness is low. Actually, achievement striving is not a bad one to have. Self-discipline, 1. I've seen lower. So I've had people come into the clinic that are just extremely disorganized. They're haphazard. Um, their level of self-efficacy isn't great, so they don't really think too highly of themselves, essentially. Just everything's in a complete shambles. They just can't seem to get anything done. And then because of that, they're starting to get depressed. And in some cases, I've seen people come in with stress and anxiety disorders and things like that because of it as well. So this is a good example of jumping on the daily activity list that I was talking about before. So getting up and making your bed in the morning, for example. I've had people that have struggled to even do that. Like their life is in such a kind of disarray that even getting them to do that consistently for 7 days was like really difficult. But we persevered, and what we found after 16 weeks is that their conscientiousness actually went through the roof. So the good thing about people who may be scoring low in conscientiousness is to get to moderate, it doesn't really take too much. To get from moderate to high, for example, takes a little bit more work because you've already got the foundations already there. But if you're basically starting from nothing, it's easy to get to 50%. Your body seems to, well, based on the research that I've seen, the body seems to react quite well to it when you're trying to develop your conscientiousness. It seems to just, you know, suck all that knowledge and activity up. And that's, I think, because at the human level, we do seek some order and structure in life. because that brings us purpose and direction and meaning. And when we feel like we have a sense of purpose, then that's good. We get a general positive feeling of well-being from that. So I think down at the deep kind of genetic level, this stuff starts to make sense as well. Yeah, so this is where questionnaires and surveys get interesting, right? Because every sort of research methodology, it has its limitations, right? There's no perfect way to measure stuff. That's why there's so many different qualitative and quantitative methods and approaches of collecting data, because there's no perfect one exists. They all have their place and they all have their strengths, but they come with confounding variables and limitations as well. One of the limitations of your survey is that, well, a lot of the people answer questionnaires based on how they feel in the moment, which isn't necessarily a good overall representation of how you feel generally, like week to week, month to month. So one thing I should have mentioned was, when you start to fill out these types of questionnaires, try not to answer and respond to the questions based on how you feel right now, but how you feel in general. So if you want to measure how you feel in the moment, that's a different questionnaire. We've got what we refer to as state personality questionnaires for that, not trait personality questionnaires. Having order, yeah, definitely. There's some really cool studies that look at the interrelationships between a person reporting to have and feel purpose in their life measured against their level of orderliness. So another thing to keep in mind, that if you're scoring low, don't worry, because we've gotten to a place in our understanding about personality is we now know that there's a level of plasticity. It's trainable, it's adaptable. You can improve it if you have a willingness to. Nutrition, sleep, they're completely separate seminars. Um, I could probably do a 6 series seminar on nutrition and sleep, because there's just so much literature on them. I've run AMAs before on them, but it was a very kind of brief surface level look at nutrition and sleep. But I'm happy to do more in-depth ones after we get through the trading psychology one. But in terms of trading performance, yeah, nutrition and sleep are massive, massive. So there was a study done, like just an example on sleep. There was a really cool study done a couple of years ago that looked at sleep levels and overall trading performance. So they found that people who were on average sleeping 4 hours a night were actually not only making more mistakes with their trading, but they were entering into trades that normally they wouldn't even enter into if they were getting a solid 8 hours sleep. Another interesting study that it only takes 2 nights in a row. So if you've had 2 poor nights of sleep where you've only slept, say, 3 or 4 hours, during the day, it's like you're getting around with 3 full standard drinks of alcohol in your system. So dexterity is reduced, agility is reduced, critical thinking abilities are reduced, prefrontal cortex activity is reduced. That's how serious and important sleep is. Like if you're not sleeping well, it's almost like you're walking around with 3 drinks already in your system. Dolgy. Again, yeah, might be low, but it's not the end of the world because you can train it. See, if we went back to say the 1950s, 1960s, and before all then, and we did these tests now, personality psychologists would be saying something along the lines of "you're stuffed," but that's just not the case. We know a lot more now. Sleep's an interesting one because it's not about necessarily the number of hours that you sleep. It's about the quality of sleep that you get because there's different sleep stages. So some of you may have heard of alpha sleep, delta sleep, and REM sleep. REM is your rapid eye movement, which is the essentially the deepest level of sleep. That's where you need to be. That's where the body is repairing, it's rejuvenating. It's at its most relaxed state where it does all the good work. So for most people, it takes anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half to go through those initial early phases, delta, alpha, and beta, into REM. So if you're sleeping for like an hour, you probably haven't reached REM. And if you're constantly waking up in the middle of the night, you're not getting to that deep level of sleep where the body needs to fully repair and things like that. So yeah, it's not always necessarily about just 8 hours. It's about getting like a solid 8 hours, but with a good 4 to 5 hours worth of REM sleep in there as well.
When it comes to the sleep side of things, is there anything you do personally to improve your sleep before you go to bed?
Yeah, so there's quite a few techniques that you can trial and error because again, what works for me might not work for you. So sometimes you just have to try a few and just see how it feels. But for me, um, thankfully, I've never actually been a bad sleeper. I've always been able to get to sleep pretty quick, even when I'm stressed. So I'm kind of lucky in those respects. But if I am struggling, deep breathing exercises helps me. Um, so kind of deep breath in, hold it, and then kind of slow breath out. So deep breathe in for maybe 5 to 6 seconds, hold it, and then out for five or so seconds. Do that maybe. I normally do it maybe 6 or 7 times, and then my body just enters just a slightly deeper state of relaxation, and then I find from there I just kind of nod off. Also reading. So I get into bed. I turn off as much lighting as possible. So I've got like a little night light that has a small battery in it that I just stick onto the top of my book and it kind of folds over the top. Um, Most times I get through like maybe 3 pages and then I'm done. So that might be something that might be useful. If you're interested in supplements, There's magnesium threonate, which has had a lot of encouraging results in the literature. So it depends on the tablet that you buy. So if you're buying the 2,000 milligram tablet, take 3 of those about an hour and a half before bed. And a lot of people have found that helps. It helps with memory, focus, and brain function as well. So there's other upsides to taking magnesium threonate as well. I take it sometimes. I got 2 bottles, so 240 tablets for about $40. So it's not that expensive. It lasts a while. What else?
I think reading's definitely a good one. Definitely, I've not done any reading for years, but always wanted to get back into it.
Yeah, reading seems to be a good one for many people.
You said about the box breathing as well. Have you tried it? So when you do the first deep breath in through your nose, have you like double stacked your breaths to help
Yes.
calm? Yeah.
So Andrew Huberman, he's a neuroscientist from Stanford University. He's got some really, really good, insightful YouTube seminars and stuff like that. And he's recently done one on sleep. And yeah, he mentioned breathing exercises. He mentioned magnesium threonate. There's actually, if you are like if you're suffering from like insomnia, like clinically you struggle to sleep, and you have really bad difficulty getting to sleep, you can actually stack three components. The first is magnesium threonate, and the other two are, just let me find it. I think I deleted it. I had it in a Word document. Yeah, I've lost them. Oh, actually, here they are. So if you stack magnesium threonate, uh, apigenin, that one, and glycinate, those three. If you stack those, those three have been proven to be pretty much the best way to get to sleep and like solid sleep. So a lot of people talk about melatonin, for example, being useful for sleep. It's good, but only to a certain extent. So it helps you get to sleep, but it doesn't help you stay asleep, if that makes sense. So if you have trouble where you're waking up all the time in the middle of the night consistently, or if like little noises during the night just keep waking you up, the melatonin's not going to help, because melatonin's only been proven to help you to get to sleep, not to keep you asleep. Whereas these three products here have been proven to not only help you get to sleep, but help you stay asleep. And they've also been proven to get you to that REM cycle of sleep, that deep level of sleep, quite efficiently as well. Yeah, getting sunlight 7 to 10 minutes a day directly through the eyes, so don't wear glasses. That's been known to help with a whole host of stuff: positive well-being, mood states, sleep, all sorts of stuff. And yeah, do it when you wake up in the morning, because it sets you up for the rest of the day. Even when it's cloudy, uh, if it's cloudy, you just have to walk a little bit more. So instead of 7 to 10 minutes, make it about 15. Oh, damn, I've got 5 whitelists to give away. The cold showers are good. Cold shower therapy is good, but there's things you need to know about it. Like, for example, with gym, you do not do cold therapy after gym, and don't do it within the 6-hour window, because what the research has found, that it actually stunts the anabolic growth process if you have cold showers after doing physical exercise up to 6 hours. So before gym is fine, and on days off is fine, and after 6 hours after gym is fine, but not within that 6-hour window. Yeah, there was a study that come out like literally a month ago that just blew all that wide open. Because before that, everyone used to think that you would do it after gym. Like, the best thing that was reported to do was hot and cold. So sauna, cold shower, sauna, ice bath, whatever you can get into essentially. But it doesn't. It's not the case. The cold therapy actually stunts the anabolic growth, which is, well, if you're trying to build muscle, it's not great. Meditation's good for trading as well. It calms the mind. So I talk a little bit about meditation in the other seminars coming up. Just avoid caffeine altogether. Caffeine releases cortisol, and for cortisol to work, so cortisol is usually secreted in fight or flight situations, when the adrenaline starts to pump. But cortisol uses muscle; it breaks down muscle to give you energy. So if you want to keep your muscle density, stay away from coffee. Yeah, which has caffeine in it. I think I've only had a coffee once in my life, and it was when I was about 7. I grabbed it. I grabbed it from the kitchen when Mum wasn't looking, and I took a big mouthful, and that's it. It just gave me PTSD for life. Mum has it like super, super strong, and it just killed me as like a 7-year-old. I think I had a Starbucks one once, like when I was in my early 20s. I think it was like a caramel macchiato or something. But it just made me really jittery. I didn't like it. I opened up the textbook. Yep, classic. How can we get rid of caffeine? So, like any other drug, um, you probably need to wean yourself off it. Sure, there are people that can go cold turkey. Maybe you can as well. But again, it just depends on your level of resilience. And the thing with addiction, we're getting a bit off topic here, but the thing about addiction is the individual has to have a willingness to give up the drug. It's almost like a threshold that they have to cross over unconsciously. Otherwise, not they're not gonna give it up properly. They'll end up returning to it. So firstly, you have to have your mindset right. So set your mindset, then think about going off it. The gradual or the radical question, that is completely up to the individual. Most people, when I'm helping people with addictions, I go the gradual step. So, for example, if you have 5 a day, start with 4, do that for a week. Then next week, go to 3. Then week after, go to 2. And then week after, go to 1. And then that's a nice little downward trajectory of slowly weaning it out of your system. Yeah, that's right. Anything can be essentially addictive. I've had to help people that have had like shopping addictions, for example. Internet addiction's another one. Phone use is another one. Um, I've had people where they're addicted to sucking their thumb, for example. So yeah, they come in all shapes and sizes and forms. Yeah, you know why? Because Huberman has coffee. Huberman, if you don't know, he used to be a pro skater back in the day. He was sponsored and everything. He used to actually tear it up. He was a really good skater. Then he gave it up, turned to academia, and became a professor. Not Shan, no, no. Andrew Huberman used to be a pro skater. Oh, Abs is typing. Here we go. Bro, no, you don't. You're trying to suck me into like a D's nuts joke or something. Well, then ask it. People's microphones should be working, right? It might be push to talk, but yeah, jump on. Oh, I need to stop recording.